Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we cut through the noise and get right to the knowledge you need. Today, we're tackling something that is, I think, a really frustrating paradox of modern life. It's that person who looks like the absolute definition of success, but is secretly drowning.
It's such a common picture. It's the high-achieving executive, the dedicated parent, the professional who just seems to be juggling five lives at once, flawlessly.
Right, flawlessly. On the outside, they look completely composed, but the research you brought in today, it tells a very different story.
It really does. I mean, we assume that outward success somehow protects people from internal struggle, but what the evidence shows us is, well, it's pretty much the opposite.
The opposite how?
Studies that trap these high-performing individuals, they consistently show elevated rates of mental health issues. For some of these groups, anxiety, depression, even substance misuse are reported at rates, get this, 2 to 3 times higher than the general population.
2 to 3 times. Wow.
Yeah, their success becomes this kind of ironic mask for some really chronic psychological distress.
That statistic alone should be a huge wake-up call. And that's really our mission for this deep dive, right? To look beyond the crisis point. We always frame therapy as something you do when the wheels have completely fallen off.
Exactly, when you're at rock bottom.
But today we're arguing that it's a vital tool for people who are, functioning perfectly fine, but they're just not flourishing. So we're going to look at 5 critical signals that show you might need support, like right now.
And to sort of set the stage for that, it's important to remember that while identifying these signs is step one, many people, especially high achievers, they delay getting help.
They wait too long.
Far too long.
Yeah.
Because they're still hitting their deadlines. They're still showing up for their families. They're still performing.
Okay, let's unpack that barrier for a second. That internal voice for the high achiever is so often, if I'm still getting things done, then this discomfort, it can't be that bad,
Or I should be able to handle this myself.
that one.
That belief in, radical self-reliance is a massive hurdle. The research is really clear on this. The 2 main barriers are minimizing the symptoms and, of course, the fear of stigma.
Because when your whole identity is built on being competent and capable.
Admitting you're struggling feels like a fundamental failure, like an existential threat.
But here's the problem I see. For that high achiever, that initial discomfort, that sort of low-grade anxiety, doesn't that just feel like a normal Monday? How do you tell the difference between a rough week and a real chronic issue?
That's the key question. And that's where the shift happens. You keep trying to just, grit your teeth and push through it.
Waiting for it to pass.
Right. And the biggest motivator, the thing that finally gets people to seek help, is the realization that minimizing it isn't working. The symptoms didn't get better, they didn't interfere less, and they definitely didn't just disappear.
So it stops being about this moral duty to handle it, and it becomes about the practical reality of, what's actually working for you.
Absolutely. You don't need a clinical diagnosis to be struggling. You don't need to hit a breaking point. Just emotional discomfort that sticks around is more than enough reason to get support. And we know that early help often prevents those low-grade symptoms from spiraling.
Okay, that sets the stage perfectly for our first 2 signs, which really focus on that chronic load that high achievers carry. So let's start with sign number 1. Constant anxiety and overthinking. That never shuts off.
This is a big one. The defining trait of high-functioning anxiety is that it masquerades perfectly as ambition.
Right. It feels productive.
It feels like the engine of your success, not a bug. So you look really productive, but internally, your mind is just running this constant, exhausting background scan for threats.
That looping worry. I think we all know that feeling. Replaying conversations, analyzing every possible outcome. It just kills any chance of genuine rest, doesn't it?
It does. You just assume that tension is the price you pay for being effective. But your body doesn't see it that way.
What do you mean?
Your body registers that chronic, low-grade stress as a persistent threat. And the research strongly links this kind of unrelenting inner tension to elevated risks for long-term physical health problems.
Like what kind of problems?
Heart disease, chronic GI disorders. The physical cost of always being on is very, very real.
So for someone listening who is just, running on fumes, what's a pragmatic way for them to check in on this?
Try this. Just a simple barometer. Pay attention to your emotional baseline. If you feel tension or anxiety or just irritability,
Yeah.
if that's showing up more days than not.
If that's your new normal.
Exactly. If that's your resting state now, it's time to talk to someone. It's a really simple daily metric.
Okay, so if that persistent anxiety is the psychological engine, I imagine the next sign is about the sheer cost of keeping that engine revving so high. That brings us to sign number 2. Daily life feels harder, despite getting everything done.
This one is maybe the most insidious sign because you're still checking all the boxes, you're meeting your responsibilities at work, at home, but every little task feels heavier.
Heavier how?
Making dinner, replying to an email, running an errand. It all requires so much more effort than it used to. You feel drained all the time, you can't concentrate, you lose your patience over nothing.
It's like you're trying to drive your car, but you're dragging the emergency brake along with you. You're still moving forward, but you're just destroying the transmission.
That is a perfect analogy.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And this high-functioning fatigue, it often shows up as these subtle physical things people just ignore.
Oh, like what?
Like chronic fatigue that a good night's sleep doesn't fix. Or you have downtime, but you can't actually relax. Or you get those recurring tension headaches, the tight shoulders.
The body's warning lights are flashing.
They're flashing.
Yeah.
And ignoring them lets that chronic stress turn into chronic depletion.
So if you recognize that feeling, that increased friction, how do you even start to release some of that pressure?
The tip here is about giving yourself permission. Radical permission. Find just one small area where you can let go of the grip.
Just one.
Just one to start. Say no to one extra commitment. Or decide, you know what, no email after 6 p.m. Giving yourself that little bit of breathing room shows you that the world doesn't fall apart. And that starts to break the cycle.
Okay, let's shift from the effects to the cause, to the inner architecture of the high achiever. Sign number 3 is perfectionism, driven by an overactive inner critic.
This is the core psychological trap right here. You set these incredibly high standards for yourself, but instead of feeling satisfied when you meet them,
It's never enough.
it is never enough. You're living in this constant fear of making a mistake,
Yeah.
which leads to either crippling procrastination or just endless overpreparation.
And you dismiss any successes, right?
That-
But you magnify every tiny failure.
Exactly. The inner critic just amplifies it.
This feels completely tied to imposter syndrome, that feeling that despite all the evidence, you're a fraud and you're just waiting to be found out.
It is. They're deeply connected. That pursuit of perfection, it's fueled by anxiety and that fear of being exposed. And it's a direct line to burnout and depression because you never, ever feel worthy. The moment the performance stops, the self-blame kicks in.
So if this is really deep-seated, maybe from childhood, where love or approval was tied to performance, how can therapy even begin to untangle that?
This is where we go deep. So a therapy like cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, that helps you directly challenge that rigid all-or-nothing thinking. It helps you see a mistake not as a character flaw, but as, data, an opportunity to learn.
And what about something like ACT? I've heard about acceptance and commitment therapy.
Yes. ACT is incredibly powerful here. It focuses on what we call psychological flexibility. It encourages you to focus on living by your values rather than chasing these unattainable perfectionistic goals.
Because for a perfectionist, that means, well, what? Learning to be okay with good enough.
It means learning to tolerate the intense discomfort that comes with good enough. It's about separating your self-worth from your output. The goal is to replace that whole cycle of self-blame with genuine self-understanding. It's about realizing your need for flawlessness is really about a need for external approval.
Wow. That leads us perfectly into the hidden cost of maintaining that flawless identity, which is sign number 4. Difficulty with emotional intimacy and feeling isolated in a crowd.
This is the tragic part of the facade. You might have this huge professional network, a busy social life, but you feel profoundly lonely.
Like you're on the outside looking in.
Completely. You can't be vulnerable. You can't ask for support. Because you have this core belief that showing any need completely undermines your competence. You're just stuck in performance mode 24/7.
You build this fortress of achievements around you, and then you realize you're the only one locked inside it.
That's a powerful way to put it. It's a deep disconnection. And we see interpersonal problems as a very common reason for people seeking care. Withdrawing from a partner, getting into the same arguments over and over.
Because you can't express what you actually need.
Exactly. Because the root belief that your worth is tied only to your achievements. And so being emotionally honest just feels way, way too risky.
So how does the therapy room break that specific pattern? What's the unique power there?
The therapy space provides a confidential, safe place for what we call a corrective emotional experience.
A corrective emotional experience.
It's a space where vulnerability has zero social or professional consequence. You can practice taking the mask off and see that you're still safe, you're still valued, you're still competent, even when you admit you're struggling. It directly fights that core fear that need equals weakness.
Okay, so we've covered the chronic strain, the isolation, and our final sign really feels like the end game of all that relentless effort. This is sign number 5, emotional numbness or using busyness to avoid internal experience.
This is what happens when the emotional reserves are just gone,
Yeah.
depleted. You're moving through life feeling flat, disconnected. You're wondering why the things that are supposed to feel good just don't. It's an emotional blunting.
Or you swing the other way. You use constant workaholism or maybe some unhealthy habits, like relying on that glass of wine every night or more, as a shield.
That's a critical distinction.
Hmm.
Those habits are so often framed as dedication or just winding down, but really they're coping strategies to escape difficult internal feelings.
And that avoidance leads directly to burnout.
Directly. Burnout is characterized by that persistent exhaustion, cynicism, and that emotional blunting we just talked about.
And the thing with burnout is you can take a week off work, but you come back feeling just as exhausted because the real problem wasn't addressed.
Exactly right. The core psychological stress is still there. Which brings us back to what therapy is really aiming for. It's about moving beyond just managing symptoms. If we look at the bigger picture, we can differentiate between two kinds of recovery. The first is functional recovery. That's the outward evidence that you can, function at work in self-care.
They're checking the boxes again.
You're checking boxes. But functioning isn't the same as living.
No.
And that's where the deep insight approach really focuses. It's on the second type, personal recovery. This is your own subjective sense of living a truly meaningful life, achieving genuine flourishing, which is so much more than just the absence of symptoms,
It's about satisfaction and meaning.
and a sense of internal peace that has nothing to do with your external achievements.
That is such an essential insight, and that's what we really want you to take away from this. Therapy isn't about repairing a breakdown. It's an investment in your long-term effectiveness, your health, your career. It's not a weakness.
It's a proactive investment. It helps you turn those private, gnawing issues, like that perfectionism, into real opportunities for deep personal growth. To find a way to have healthy striving, but paired with self-compassion.
So if these 5 signs, that constant worry, the intense effort for daily life, the harsh inner critic, the deep isolation, or that emotional numbness, if any of that resonates with you, it is time to pause.
It's time to ask the deeper question.
And here's the final provocative thought for you to consider. If you are functioning perfectly on the outside, what difficult emotion or what painful experience are you constantly avoiding with the pace of your life?
Answering that question is really the first step. And at Edward Jenny and Associates, we specialize in uncovering those deeper patterns under the surface using our deep insight model. If you're in the Chester County or Kennett Square area, or really anywhere in Pennsylvania through telehealth, we offer confidential, evidence-based therapy that's focused on clarity, growth, and achieving that genuine flourishing we talked about.
And you don't need to wait until you're completely overwhelmed. You can schedule a free deep insight consultation with their client care coordinator. It's a chance to just clarify what you want to understand and create a personalized roadmap. Taking that first step is the best way to move from just surviving to actually fully living.